Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 69th episode of In the Trenches, Kroll's weekly cyber threat intelligence briefing. Today is the 23rd of September, and my name is George Glass, an Associate Managing Director in the Cyber Threat Intelligence team. Joining me today from the CTI team are Sam Flint, Ryan Hicks, Rome Garcia, and Sarah Becker. As always, we will be covering the latest news and most recent trends that our threat intelligence team is witnessing in the trenches. So let's get into the situation report. Firstly, some research from Checkpoint here. Checkpoint researchers reported a targeted attack against Iraqi government networks where two new malware families, VT and Spiril, were used. The new malware, both of which are backdoors, demonstrated advanced evasive capabilities and were distributed via Iraqi government-themed Windows installers. This was combined with other malware that appeared to target the same entities. A malicious IIP module called cache-http.dll was found to be malware designed to monitor and respond to specific web server activities, which could effectively snoop on incoming web requests and look for hidden commands to execute. This is something that we're still looking at, but certainly some really good research from Checkpoint there. Next up is a follow-on from our bulletin last week. POC code has been released for CVE 2024-29847, which affects Ivanti Endpoint Manager. A technical write-up and proof of concept were posted by Summoning Team, who discovered a remote code execution vulnerability in Ivanti Endpoint Manager. The vulnerability was patched on September 10th and covered by Kroll last week. This will likely mean that exploitation of unpatched systems will continue, will commence in the near term. Ivanti Endpoint Manager is a high priority target for threat actors, and patching this vulnerability is imperative. Kroll is investigating the POC for detection opportunities. Lastly, some more law enforcement activity. It seems like we're reporting on this more and more, which is great news. Europol and partners have disrupted an organized crime communication network. Together with law enforcement and jurisdictional authorities from around the world, Europol and Eurojust have successfully dismantled an encrypted communications platform that was established to facilitate serious and organized crime perpetrated by dangerous criminal networks operating on a global scale. The platform, known as Ghost, was used as a tool to carry out a wide range of criminal activities, including but not limited to large-scale drug trafficking, money laundering, and instances of violence. Worldwide, several thousand people use the tool, which has its own infrastructure and application with a network of resellers based in several countries. So some really good news, more disruption. We love to see it. Hopefully some more disruption to come over the fall and winter period. Right, let's get on to our briefing proper. I will be covering a new VMware vCenter flaw. Sam will be covering Kiosk mode, which is being used to frustrate users into providing credentials. Ryan will be taking us through this week's malware spotlight on AMADEY. Rome will be covering KTA 353 or Void Banshees, exploitation of vulnerabilities in IE, and of course we'll go to our ransomware roundup where Sarah is going to cover Vanir data leak site being seized. So let's get into this vulnerability. Vulnerability is tracked as CVE 2024-38812. It comes with a CVSS score of 9.8, making it critical. It affects VMware vCenter Server and VMware Cloud Foundation, as Cloud Foundation also includes vCenter Server. The vulnerability is essentially a heap overflow vulnerability, which is targeting a specific protocol in the application itself. A malicious actor that can see the device via network may trigger the vulnerability by sending a specially crafted network packet, potentially leading to remote code execution. Bearing in mind that's a heap buffer overflow vulnerability, so not all exploits will be made the same, most likely. The vulnerability was responsibly disclosed by contestants taking part in the 2024 Matrix Cup, which is held in China. This likely means that technical write-ups will be released in the medium term, discussing the vulnerability and how it was exploited. Kroll performs internet scans to identify the attack surface, and we show that it's fairly large, over 10,000 devices attached to the internet. And with VMware being such a high priority target for threat actors, and especially those ransomware operators, it is imperative to patch this vulnerability as soon as possible. Kroll and Broadcom have not observed any POC code or attempted weaponization of this vulnerability. So certainly want to patch as soon as possible there. Now I will hand over to Sam to take us through some new social engineering techniques that malware is using to frustrate users. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you, George. This week, researchers uncovered a novel new malware campaign in use since at least the 22nd of August, which utilizes AMADEY loader to deliver a simple auto-hit script and still see malware. The credential flusher script identifies which browsers are available on the victim's host, then launches the preferred browser in Kiosk mode and navigates to the change password URL for Google accounts. Once there is no obvious way of shutting the browser window without the victim entering their Google credentials. Kiosk mode, a special configuration used by both browsers and apps, runs in full screen mode and limits user interaction for use in public kiosk and demonstration terminals. In the attack, kiosk mode is abused and the escape and F11 keys are also disabled to further restrict the user's ability to close the browser window. Once the victim is sufficiently frustrated attempting to close the browser that they enter their password, they are also invited to save it to the browser. Once saved, StealC grabs the password from the browser's credential store and delivers it to the attackers. StealC will also grab all browser-stored credentials, cookies, and tokens, so attackers could end up taking control of multiple online accounts. To exit kiosk mode, victims should instead try other hotkey combinations like Alt F4, Alt Tab, Control Alt Delete, and Control Shift Escape, which can bring the desktop to the foreground, cycle through open apps, and launch the task manager to terminate the browser. If all else fails, shut down the machine, boot to safe mode, and initiate a full antivirus scan to remove AMADEY and StealC malware. Don't just ignore spontaneous kiosk browser mode launches. They're not normal and could be a sign of a wider malware infection. That's all for me. Back to you, George.
Excellent. Thank you, Sam. That was really good information there. Thank you so much. And on the topic of AMADEY, let's go to Ryan for this week's Malware Spotlight. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, George. Yeah, Sam sort of mentioned AMADEY in the campaign. So yeah, just to kind of cover what AMADEY is in general. So it's primarily an information stealer and loader used to gather some information from a victim machine and deploy additional malware. It's also been observed being used to conduct distributed denial of service as part of a botnet. Due to its kind of malware as a service model, AMADEY has been observed being deployed via a wide variety of initial access methods, as you can imagine, with it being fairly available to a number of threat actors. It just depends on how they want to use it. Some access methods include sort of phishing, fake software downloads, and also been seen delivered via other loaders, such as Smoke Loader. And during the phase where AMADEY is sort of seen in the initial access, it's also been noted that it's been seen alongside other stealers, including Redline, Lumber Stealer, as well as Private Loader. So really just sort of showing the wide crossover between a lot of these sort of common tools appearing in the same campaigns. In terms of persistence, AMADEY employs several persistence techniques, first of which is by a scheduled task. Additionally, it's drops its executable in the temp directory of the current user and adds a new startup entry into the startup registry key. So the first of two methods there. And also in a recent campaign by KTA082, also known as Kim Suki, AMADEY was observed creating the path that you see there, that directory, where a Visual Basic script was created and ran on startup. And for sort of further actions, it really depends on the modules used. Quite a modular piece of malware and it allows the attackers to choose which kind of payloads they want to deploy. Again, being available to a wide variety of threat actors, this kind of gives a lot of choice for who wants to use it and for what reason. And the further payloads, as Sam mentioned, StealC being one of them, also including LokiBot and Azeralt, as well as a number of sort of ransomware families. But there's really a huge list of kind of these information stealers and further malware that AMADEY has been involved with and deployed. It does have, as I mentioned, it does have a few of its own modules for credential harvesting through several DLL files. These are largely around crypto wallet collection. And that's all for me. More information can be found within the weekly report on AMADEY. Back to you, George.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, Ryan. Really, really appreciate it. Next, we go to Rome for some interesting news regarding Internet Explorer 0 days. Rome, over to you.
Yeah, Microsoft has confirmed that CVE 2024-43461, a vulnerability that was patched as part of September's Patch Tuesday, was being exploited by a threat actor that Microsoft calls as Void Banshee and tracked by Kroll as KTA353. The vulnerability has been given the severity score of 8.8 or high. Through the vulnerability, attackers are able to disguise malicious files as PDFs or other benign files. Attackers use Unicode whitespace characters designed for Braille to pad the file name of these files. By padding the space between the PDF's extension and the true extension of the file with empty space, programs do not display the full name of the file to the user. Users are then tricked into thinking they are opening a PDF file. You can see this in the third image below. This file name would overflow the Windows UI and appear as books A0UJKO.pdf. The rest of the file name can be revealed by clicking on the three dots in the red rectangle. Researchers had previously assumed that this was addressed as part of a patch for a different vulnerability, CVE 2024-38112. The vulnerability was patched in the July patch cycle. This vulnerability is exploited through the use of the mhtml handle in .url or .hta files. When a user clicks on these types of files, the browser that is used is not one of the more modern and secure browsers like Chrome or Firefox. The mhtml handle calls for Internet Explorer instead. Internet Explorer was retired in 2022 and is more easily exploitable by threat actors. By using the two vulnerabilities in tandem, like you see in the images, Void Banshee tricked users into running malware on their computers. Through the initial execution of the fake PDF, users were infected with the Atlantida stealer. The stealer then collects passwords, credit card, and cryptocurrency information and sends this information back to the attacker. Researchers had previously reported this attack chain to Microsoft in May, but the samples they used for analysis were first cited in January 2023, and threat actors may have been using this method since before then. Kroll has created specific detections for this masquerading technique. What's interesting to note here, though, is that the vulnerabilities were not used in a way to take advantage of a security flaw in the system. Instead, the main goal of the technique was to trick the user. We recommend patching Windows machines with the latest release and training employees to be continuously suspicious of PDFs from unknown sources. Back to you, George.
Excellent. Thank you, Rome. Really, really interesting stuff there. Thank you so much. And finally, we go to Sarah for our ransomware roundup. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, George. So in July, we reported on VMWare ransomware. They were new within that month, and that was from discovering the creation of their data leak site. And at the time that we were reporting on this new group, they had 3 victim organizations claimed on that site. So as of last week, when accessing the group's site, there is a splash page displayed as seen in the screenshot about the group and their data leak site being seized by German law enforcement. So a press release from German law enforcement announced the seizure of the ransomware group's data leak site, and then they stated in that investigation as well that the identity of the threat actors behind it is still ongoing. So unknown if any arrests have been made at this time. But researchers are speculating as to why this group was identified from German law enforcement with them being so new. So we are still looking into that and monitoring the situation. That's all for me, George.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And thank you also to Ryan, Sam, and Rome for presenting today. That's all we have time for this week. If you have any questions or comments, please do reach out to us using cti@kroll.com. That's cti@kroll.com. Have a wonderful day.